So I'm recording this 2 days after the presidential election and the afternoon of the Fed's most recent decision to cut interest rates again. Today, in a unanimous vote, the Fed decided to cut rates by another 25 basis points, so a little bit smaller than the 50 basis point cut that they did last time, but they cited that inflation is stable at 2.1% and employment still remains strong, with national unemployment rates at about 4.1%, so stabilizing there as well. But remember, when we talked about it last time, that these rates aren't directly tied to mortgage rates, and actually after the Fed cut rates last time, mortgage rates ticked down a little bit that first day, but then have kind of gone up steadily ever since. So not to beat a dead horse on that, but those two things aren't directly tied. And speaking of that, mortgage applications for both purchases and refinance declined again this week. That makes 6 straight weeks in a row of declining mortgage rates, with them kind of hovering around that 6.8, almost 7% range. With that, presidential election and the Fed cutting rates, but mortgage rates going up to around, they're almost at 7%, that's generally not good news for the housing market. The election was, very contentious, whether you're happy with what happened or not, but now we're just kind of in that transition of leadership time, which is, again, a little bit more uncertain, not the best thing for the housing market typically. But I wanted to tell you real quick about 3 scenarios that are going on right now in the Winston-Salem real estate market: 2 buyers and 1 seller. These are transactions of mine that are happening, like I said, right now, so you can just kind of get an insight into a little bit of what's going on the ground. First one is a seller. Now, we had fewer showings on this house. The house looked nice, was priced and marketed properly, but even with only a few showings, we priced the house over the Zillow's estimate. We sold it in 2 days for over the Zillow's estimate, and it just went really, really quick. On the buy side, I'm working with 1 buyer that we got a house under contract. It originally went under contract about 30 days or so. It had multiple offers in the first weekend over asking price, went under contract. This is in one of Winston-Salem's popular neighborhoods. It's a really cute house, priced appropriately, but after it went under contract, the buyer's financing, something happened with that. They pulled it, something happened. It came back on the market because of buyer financing, I was able to find out, and then the house sat. As we've talked about before, a house going off the market and then coming back on, people just see that as a huge red flag. So the house sat and sat. Very nice looking house. We were able to get it under contract, under asking price, with some repairs being made even before closing. And another buyer right now, house is in a great location again. House is probably a little bit overpriced, but it sat on the market for weeks, and we ended up negotiating a huge discount for these buyers off the purchase price. So with all those headwinds on buyers, the market is just a little bit fussy, right? If it's not right or something looks fishy, buyers don't want to put their neck out, especially in a due diligence state like North Carolina, where they have to put deposit money up. They're just really being more picky. And I said in the last market update when we talked about that, I thought, October through at least January or February into the new year is going to be one of the best times to buy a house in the near future, and I still believe that. Because of these headwinds and higher mortgage rates and some uncertainty and things like that, this is a better time to buy, but the market did not do what I thought it would in this market update. And if you need help buying or selling real estate, my contact information is on the screen and in the description below, but the market overall, I guess, is just much more resilient than I thought. And I expected some of these numbers to move much more in buyers' favor, but they just did not in this last month. We're not going to go through all of them because I want to spend some time on what I think it looks like going into the future, but I do want to go through 3 sets of numbers really quick. And because remember, we're just in unprecedented territory right now in the real estate market. High rates, low inventory, a presidential election, and now a transition, and just a lot of uncertainty about the economy. Jobs getting misreported. Is the economy as good as they say or not? It's just an uncertain time. But the market in Winston-Salem and Greensboro has just been really resilient. And that's one thing to remember, right? At the end of the day, the market is the people. If people are more optimistic about what's going on in the future, that you can see that reflected in the housing market, or if they think things are going to be great, maybe they're going to buy or sell quicker than they anticipated. You can always definitely see kind of sentiment in the market reflected in the stock market. You see that what happened after the election. But what's different about the real estate market versus traditional investing, whether it's stocks, bonds, gold, whatever, people moving money around to different spots. What's different in the real estate market is that life events are always going to drive people buying and selling real estate, always. And I'm talking about the big life events, marriage, divorce, the birth of a child, a job transfer, a death, loss of a job, and too much debt, on and on. So on those big life events are always going to have people buying and selling real estate in any market. But let's go over these 3 numbers so you can really see, besides what I have going on in those transactions, I just want to give you these sets of numbers so you can just get a snapshot of what's going on right now. The first one is average sales price. And I was prepared for this number to come down after all the things we just talked about, right? Seasonality we tend to see a little bit lower prices this time of year. With the election coming up and now just happening, and with rates being so high, I really thought this would come down a little bit more. I didn't expect a big crash in it or anything like that, but I did think it would come down, and actually ticked up slightly. Not a lot, again, but to go from down a little bit, what I thought, to come up a little bit, that's a decent size swing. But more importantly, worth noting about the overall market, average sales price did tick up again last month. But if you can see, over the last 12 months, we're in kind of a comfortable little range here. I mean, it is unfortunately still near all-time highs, but our prices have stabilized a lot over the last year. Similar story with percent of list price. I thought this was going to come down a little bit this time, and it actually ticked up slightly. Again, not a lot. It only ticked up 0.1%. And to be clear, this is not huge discounts we're talking about. Remember when we had that streak of 100% or more for the longest time, and the last time we spoke, we came down to 99.4% of list price. I thought it might tick a little bit down since that again, but it did tick up slightly to 99.5. So not huge discounts, but it is worth noting just the overall resiliency in the market. Next one is a supply number. We saw a month supply of homes tick up to almost 3, still under 3, which that number still does favor sellers, but that has been on a nice steady increase over the last few months, which is good to see. Interestingly enough, the number that we're at right now is almost the exact number this same month as 2019 before the pandemic. We're almost at the same month supply of homes at this same time 5 years later. A little bit odd, but remember that time was market still favored sellers. It just had, I guess, a different feel to it, right? That felt like that market was beginning to heat up, and that time still, favored sellers, but this market, while it's similar, feels like it's cooling down. So what does all this mean going forward? Well, it means a few different things. Seasonally, and with rates where they are right now, and just the overall transition, what's going on in the world and our economy and things like that, it's a good time to buy. Remember, best deals tend to happen when there's not a ton of buyers out there, right? That's where there are deals to be had. And now is still definitely one of those times, based again on all those other things that we discussed. So yes, there might be a little bit less inventory right now, but there's far less demand right now than there would be, in March, April, May of 2025. And I know I always want, when I make these videos, someone will give me an email or leave a comment on these videos. Oh, of course, you always think it's a great time to buy. I don't always think it's a great time to buy, but now is a better time than, should be probably this spring, right? And the other thing to think about why a good time to buy is, and not to beat a dead horse on that, but you can negotiate your interest rate or refinance that down the road. You can't change your purchase price down the road, right? So even though we saw prices only go up, about 4 or 5% this year, that means the $500,000 house next year, using those numbers, will be $525,000. And if you can afford it now at these rates, you can afford it at the worst of it. If the opportunity presents itself to refinance, then that's what you should do. My advice is always the same. Don't max your budget. Make sure you're comfortable with the payment as it is now at the worst of it, and you should be fine. But I just don't see prices coming down for any really big reason in the next foreseeable future. And I'm not talking about years and years. Of course, something will happen eventually, but I just don't see in the next 6 to 8 months of reason why price would come down right now. There would have to be a ton more supply come on the market, which we're just not seeing, or just demand go to almost zero. The other key to that I really want to make sure that people understand, because this is going to be a long-term one, the other key to prices kind of remaining high and still slightly going higher is the overall lack of inventory. And a big piece of that is when people got the best of it, when those rates, were in those 3% rates. And we've looked on that chart before. We have seen since the pandemic, those people that have locked in those low rates, our new listings have not broken out of that in years since then. So I don't know what the percentage, but there's a percent of people that are just not going to sell. They're just going to make do with what they have right now at their really low rate until interest rates come down, or they have one of those major life events where they have to sell. They're holding on to those rates. That's one of the big reasons we're seeing still inventory stay tight and prices stay high and slightly increase. And I don't see that changing anytime soon either, right? If these people don't have to sell, if they've already made that decision over the last couple of years where, hey, rates are at 6.5, almost 7, we're not getting rid of this rate right now, we're going to make do. Now, when rates get down, if they get down into the high 5s, mid 5s, some of that stuff might change, but we're a ways from that right now. I mean, when I looked this morning, I think rates were like 6.79 or something like that. I mean, we're a ways away from that. I think it has to get under that 6% range before some of these people will really start thinking, okay, we need that extra bedroom, or, you know, the kids are gone and we really need to downsize, you know, whatever the case may be, before some of that starts coming on the market, I think we need to see rates come down below 6. So that's my reason why saying now is a better time to buy than in the future. You can do with that what you like. And sellers, if your home is not priced right or move-in ready, if it's not marketed right, be prepared. We did see days on market tick up again this past month. Again, not by a lot, but we were under 2 weeks for like ever, and under 10 days for a long time. Now we went from 16 days average on market to right now we're at 18 days. It still seems like that's ticking up a little bit higher, so it is taking longer for homes to sell. But remember, taking longer, but prices aren't less. And I do have one of those listings. We're kind of right at that mark. We're in that like 18 to 20 days on the market. We've had some good showings. We haven't got an offer yet. I had some conversations. We might be getting one shortly, but again, it's just in that weird time. Do we look at, are we priced correctly or what's going on? Because we've had the activity, we've had the showings and the views, we just don't have the offer yet. So the market for sellers is in just a tenuous spot. And if you need help buying or selling real estate anywhere in Winston-Salem or Greensboro or High Point, I'd love to help. You can reach out to me directly at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.